I had the rare opportunity in college to take a course with a PhD climatologist named Gregory Zelinsky, who had studied ice cores in Greenland. He gave me a very broad-based perspective of the climate situation, and it was enlightening to say the least. I learned this from him. There are two things that neither side of the political divide will ever tell you about climate change. One, we didn't cause it. Global warming happens on a regular climate cycle every 100,000 years or so. Now, what causes the cycle is unknown, but it is not caused solely by the increase of greenhouse gases. 2. Even if we stopped releasing 100% of greenhouse gases instantaneously, it wouldn't matter. The amount of greenhouse gases we have released has unbalanced the cycle to an incredibly serious and dangerous degree which we cannot begin to predict the outcome of. We've reached the tipping point already long ago. We don't know what causes the cycle. We only know that the release of greenhouse gases and the greenhouse effect are a feature of the process, which predated human civilization by at least 500,000 years. Now, the normal climate cycle can't actually be caused just by greenhouse gases, and you'll see why in just a bit. They do accelerate it, however. Human output has added large amounts of CO2 and methane. No one can debate this because we can measure these gases empirically. Volcanic events have done this in the past, millions and millions of years ago, which also unbalanced the cycle, and it caused weather upheavals on a scale we simply aren't ready for as a species. We either have a very short window of decades to cease exacerbating the problem and start terraforming, or perhaps a few hundred years to learn how to live in space, because we will no longer be able to live on Earth. It will be a memory for our species, the lovely Terra we once occupied. It's really that serious. It's really that immediate. Certainly, we didn't kill the planet, but we also didn't do it any favors. If the ancient Egyptians had done to the climate what we have done, we would be facing mass extinction right now. From an ethical standpoint, one has to see that even though it doesn't affect them right now, the human race shouldn't have to abandon their ancestral home in the future, never to return, so that we can get to work quickly and enjoy Christmas lights today. The value of Earth is far more than just the resources it contains. It is a unique and beautiful expression of life, and so far the only one we know of. A diamond is rare because there are so few. How much more then would diamonds be worth if there was only one? To better understand the global climate oscillatory cycle, one may study ice cores, as Dr. Zelinsky did. A good example of this is in January 1998, the collaborative ice drilling project between Russia, the United States, and France at the Russian Vostok Station in East Antarctica yielded the deepest ice core ever recorded. Reaching a depth of 3,623 meters, the ice cores from top to bottom represent hundreds of thousands of years of seasonal ice. Each time the season makes a new layer, it's a tree gaining a new ring, and you can tell when the layer was laid by counting. There are more scientific ways like radiometric dating, but the point is that we know when each slice was laid down. And in each ring of this ice core is trapped gas and particles from periods as far back as 400,000 years ago that tell us all about the climate when that ice was laid. If you look at a graph of this data, the results will terrify you once you understand what you're seeing. The top graph shows the temperature varying from negative 10 degrees Celsius from average all the way up to 4 degrees Celsius above average over the last 400,000 years. You'll notice that we have had at least 3 prior climate change events here, here, and here, and each time the temperature went above the average by about 2 degrees Celsius. The National Centers for Environmental Information, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration tell us that the 2020 Northern Hemisphere land and ocean surface temperature was up 1.28 degrees Celsius. That's 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit above average. So right now, we're already almost 2/3 of the way up to the top of the charts for most of the previous global warming temperature spikes. Most of them reach about 2 degrees above average for a short time and then, really quickly in geologic terms, almost instantly drop as low as 9 degrees Celsius below average. Now, to give you an idea what that means, the last ice age had temperatures about 4 degrees Celsius below average. But we don't know why the temperature spiked. It could have been sunspot cycles, wobbles in the orbit, even the volcanic release of energy and gases. A lot of different scientists have a lot of ideas. The thing we do know is that it is a cycle, and that cycle has a feedback mechanism. Rising temperatures actually cause the oceans to start releasing CO2 because increased temperature causes a decrease in the solubility of gases in liquid. Hot water holds less gas. Biological processes start to create methane because they have more heat to work with. There's even frozen methane under the ocean floor as well, called clathrates, which volatilizes the ocean warms. The polar ice caps, as they melt, release CO2 as well, and they had an immense amount stored in them from previous climate events. This becomes a runaway release of greenhouse gases that eventually you can't stop. And once the tipping point in greenhouse gas concentration and global temperature is reached, the cycle starts to reverse. Over time, the Earth and the bulk of microlife remaining begins to mitigate with a process called carbon sequestration, which is a fancy way of saying the Earth, both physical and biological elements, eat all the carbon in the atmosphere to lower the temps. Or life finds a way. There are processes which sequester methane as well, but each warming event is followed by a catastrophic cooling. And while the process runs, nature takes these greenhouse gases and stows them away nice and deep where they can't hurt anybody. Sadly, we dug them all back up and burned them. Normally, this wouldn't be worrisome, because the graph tells us we have perhaps 10 or more thousand years before the really bad stuff happens. And normally, yes, this would be the case. However, the situation right now is way not normal. The really scary fact, the one that makes this so abnormal, is that this graph shows carbon dioxide only rising to roughly 300 parts per million in all 3 previous global warming events. Right now, according to the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, who keeps track of this stuff, we're at 414 parts per million. In 400,000 years, we have not seen CO2 spike above 300 ppm. And that's even when we had the worst global warming events recorded. And it's at 414 right now. If you look at the updated version with more recent numbers added to fill in from the Corps' last date measured in 2004, it's even scarier. It's literally off the charts. We are in literally uncharted territory with the numbers where they are. Look at the difference between the temperature now and in all 3 previously charted events. It's pure data chaos. Look at how large the temperature variations are, and how sudden they are, too. The methane, if you look, is actually 1,000 parts per billion more now than it has been at any point in the last 400,000 years, and methane is a greenhouse gas 4 times more potent than CO2. The introduction of man-made fossil fuel CO2, large-scale petroleum harvesting, and large-scale agriculture has obviously had a profound effect. It's the only thing different from the last 3 events, the industrial age, an immense source of external CO2 and methane. And even though this event is happening right on time, the numbers are different, meaning we have no idea what the outcome will be this time. It's happening. We don't know what the response will be, and we're out of time to come to agreement on how to fix it. We can fix it, though. We can actually reverse it quite easily, and I intend to discuss in future editions new and exciting ways to not only stop but reverse the process. Terraforming is not just for Mars. We can learn how to do it here first. The problem, as usual, the limit of our ability in this case is not the technology, it's the energy source. But even that isn't really the problem we think it is. In fact, even with current free energy collection technology, we can actually solve the climate crisis. The smartest way forward in this case would be to find a way to stop releasing CO2 and other greenhouse emissions immediately, if not sooner. And that's not really possible, unfortunately, because extortion energy won't listen, and the public is divided. Only a united public, demanding renewable energy by purchasing collectors themselves to end their dependence on outdated and obsolete limited commodity fuels, can send the message. The human race must change its entire relationship with energy in terms of usage and supply. We must vote for, fund, and only buy power from those who support the construction of large-scale free energy collectors such as solar farms and hydro and tidal power stations to make free energy available for everyone. We must also begin to equip our homes with this technology as we are able. This must happen before we can even begin to lessen the impact of this event. Electric vehicles must replace fossil fuel vehicles, and a command of energy the likes of which humankind has never had before must be achieved. We must make the paradigm shift from energy being a limited and costly thing to energy being free, bountiful, and possible to harvest in sufficient amounts to do anything, even change the climate back. We can design machines which can do this. It's not science fiction. The technology exists right now. It's the power source we're lacking. It would take previously unimagined amounts of energy in terms of fossil fuels, but they're at our fingertips if we just take hold. I mean, with enough energy, we could build machines to do the job, but the idea of petroleum powering that is laughable. How can you use the thing which has made the problem this bad to solve it? Climate change is going to happen. In fact, it is happening right now. We can't stop it, but we may be able to slow it and perhaps even learn how to reverse it in time with enough energy and ingenuity. And if history is any indication of what's about to happen, then the volume of the danger is turned up to 11 right now. Unless we find ways of generating energy which aren't dependent on fossil fuels, this will all be a moot point. Fossil fuels can't possibly help us in an ice age. They can barely help us through a basic winter as it is. Without new and innovative means of harnessing the unlimited energy all around us, the future is literally a cold, dark world with many, many less people. If we don't start now and aggressively combat this problem as a direct, existential threat to human existence, the Earth's response to this may be something the likes of which only the dinosaurs can understand.
1, 2, 3.
Energy is free.